Good morning. Sorry, somebody's texting me. Okay. All right. So I had some technical issues today that I cannot guarantee are not resolved, or I can't guarantee that they are resolved. The little holder thing for my phone, yesterday it got really hot in my car and it fell off. So now when I put it back on, it keeps falling off. So we'll see if it stays on. If you take a tumble, don't worry. I'm not, knock on wood, having any problem driving. It's just this thing holding my phone up to my window is a little bit car sick, I guess. Good morning, Diane and Loki. So today I wanted to talk really quickly about the abundance mindset. Because this is something that I've been working on for like 4 or 5 months now, maybe even longer, I'm not sure. So if you're not familiar with this concept, it's totally fine, because it was all new to me. It made perfect sense as soon as I heard it, but it was totally new to me. I hadn't ever thought about life in this way, or thought about my life in this way. But there is duality to everything. So for everything there's an equal and opposite thought pattern for it. So just like there's up, down, darkness, light, all these things, there's also this idea that there is abundance or there's lack. And depending on how you were raised, you may believe that there's a finite amount of resources in the world and in your life, and that you can only get so much before it all runs out. And I think I grew up with this concept a lot too, because I really identify with this thought pattern that there's only so much to go around. And so, especially if you grew up, in a home where there weren't a lot of resources, like maybe there wasn't a lot of money, you may feel like there's only so much to go around. When it's gone, it's gone. You got to get your piece of the pie before anyone else, because if you don't eat now, there's nothing else to eat, is basically what I'm saying. But this is not only limited to homes or families or households that don't have enough to go around. This is also true for people who, maybe there were abundant resources. Maybe, you grew up in a house and, your family was rich. However, just because your family is rich doesn't mean that they were giving you freely and letting you understand that the resources don't run out. Sometimes you may have a lot of money, and there's like an oversized load. There's like tanks and all the stuff coming through. I don't know what's happening, but I got stuck behind it. I think I'm gonna try to make it past them. So you can have a family that has a lot of money, but they believe that hard work, you only earn from hard work, and money doesn't grow on trees. And so like say your father's rich, but he's not going to give you anything because he wants you to know the value of $1, right? So they have money. So I'm not saying this is limited to any socioeconomic class. Like you could have someone who's like 3rd generation Harvard graduate. Their kids are not going to see a lot of money because they don't want the kids to be spoiled. They don't want the kids to know that, that they can just have whatever they want. So it doesn't matter. You can be rich, you can be poor, but you get this idea built into your mind at a very young age that there's only so much. I'm bouncing around. There's only so much to go around, and you got to get it now while the getting's good, because if not, you're not going to get anything. And this is detrimental to your adult life. So in childhood, these are things that we learn. Kids are born knowing that they can have whatever they want. And it's true. They scream and you give it to them because the screaming is annoying. But as you get older, it's like, no, you got to live in a society where you can't just have whatever you want. So you have to learn to decide what's important and what's of value. But then if you get to be my age, you start to realize that thinking has really held you back. So what I've been thinking about this morning, and a lot of yesterday too, is this idea of abundance versus lack. Because earlier this year, I was dealing with this whole new world that opened up when I started to think about changing my mindset from a lack mindset to an abundance mindset. And I started to think about the fact that I did believe there was only so much to go around. I remember I grew up in California, and I remember reading about the lake that was drying up. Like, it was so salty and it was drying up and the lake was going away. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's really horrible. And there are all these starving children in Africa, and I had to eat all my food because they didn't have food, which doesn't make any sense at all. But those are the things we were told. And it was just always that, one day there's not going to be enough. The whole ozone layer issue, and the polar ice caps are melting. And it was just this strange, like, the world is going to go away. And as a child, that doesn't, like, you can't process that. You just take it as face value. As a child, these things are just, your mind is malleable. And you take these things as face value. And then later you wonder, like, why the heck you're always so sad. Pretty much. So I started to focus on thinking of everything as abundant. And I really, really, really had to try, because it takes a lot when you're going to change your mindset so dramatically. It takes a lot of practice. It takes repetition. You have to repeat it over and over again. So I started to look for things, and I don't think I learned this. I think I just started doing it out of necessity, because I didn't have a concept of abundance at all in my life. Like, I didn't have a concept of, if I get more, that doesn't take away from someone else. If someone else has more, that doesn't take away from me. If I get something, if I get a piece of my pie now, I'm getting one less piece of my pie later, if that makes any sense. Like, when we're born, we only have so much of everything. And once it runs out, and that's it. And so why try to get more faster when you're going to hit your limit? At this point in my life, that doesn't make sense, but my entire life, whether I was consciously thinking of it or not, that's the way I thought. So I had to start looking for things that are abundant, so that I could wrap my head around the concept of abundance. So naturally, I looked to the stars, even though I'm in Houston and I cannot ever see them, but I have seen them before, so I use my imagination. I looked to the stars, and there's so many stars. There's so many stars. So I look to the stars, and I imagine that whatever it is that I need to feel the abundance of, I use the stars as my example. So I say things like, also I look to the trees. Like yesterday I was doing this. I was walking on campus, and there are all these beautiful trees, and there's just, millions of leaves on the trees. And that's the way, I took a picture of it actually, because that's the way I want to think about my life. The stars in the sky, the blades of grass, the leaves on the trees, these things tell you, these are examples from nature that remind you that God is not limited. He is not saying, even the hairs on your head, there's not going to be a limit to the number that you get. There's more. He didn't say, okay, I am creating 650 billion blades of grass and that's it. That's all you get for this year. No, there's no limit to the amount of grass that's growing on this planet. The water, there's no limit to water. If water is used, it evaporates back into the sky and it rains back down on us. Like, there's a cycle to it all, and it doesn't ever go away. So when I look at nature, these things are easy for me. This is me taking the path of least resistance to get to the idea that I need. So instead of thinking about money, or thinking about time, or thinking about friends or customers, I think about nature. And so instead of saying, let me tell you about resistance. So resistance is, if you start thinking, like if I start thinking about customers, I'm just starting my business and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to get let's just say 500 customers. How am I going to get 500, or let's say 1,000 true fans, since I love that whole concept of true fans. So if I say, oh my gosh, how am I going to get 1,000 true fans? That just seems so overwhelming. I'm creating resistance between me and 1,000 true fans, because I'm creating this super stressful concept in my head of like all the work that I need to do, all the things that I need to learn between myself and 1,000 true fans, and it's making me stressed out. So that's gonna push it further away from me. So I there's no calm, there's no peace with that energy, right? So what I want to do is change the concept of that to something that does feel good to me, something I can understand. And so I was walking on campus yesterday, and I wasn't using this specific example, but when I looked at the leaves on the trees, I looked up, I actually took a picture of it, and I said, I didn't say, but this is what I would say. The leaves on the trees are like the customers in my business, right? That's not a frustrating thought. Like, that doesn't stress me out, to say the leaves on the trees are like the customers in my business. And you see these beautiful trees, and the leaves are just all flapping and flipping, and they're so beautiful and green, and the background is this wonderful sky. And it doesn't make me feel like, oh my gosh, right now I have to serve all these people. It just makes me think that one day I can serve all these people. Like, one day all these people, represented by all the leaves on these trees, will be looking to me for help and guidance, and I could totally feel that joy just from looking at the trees. I can feel the joy of being able to serve. It's not me feeling stressed out about people asking me for something right now. That's, it's a whole different mindset. You can look at your money that way too. You can look at your money and say, my money is like all the blades of grass. All the money, if you really look at all the money you've made up to this point in your life, it's like so many millions of dollars probably that we don't even realize that we feel like we haven't made any money. But when you really look at how much, if you add it all up, it's a lot of money. So if you look at what you've made in the past, whether it's come through your experience or if some of it is hung around, you can think about going forward. What's ahead of you? What's behind you? What's ahead of you? And it makes you feel so much more hopeful. And that was a game changer for me when I realized that. So I'm in this, I'm driving kind of from a suburb of Houston to this really small town, and in between there's a lot of farms. And I remember when I was first practicing this concept, people have their cattle grazing, and I can see it from the freeway. And it just reminded me of the scripture about my father he owns 1,000 cattle, the cattle on 1,000 hills. And so every time I'd be driving home or even to work, and the cattle would be out grazing, and I was trying to practice this abundance concept, I would always tell myself that I own that cattle. I don't know what to do with cows. I'm not a farmer. You do not want me taking care of your animals. However, when I would see the cattle, it would remind me of the Bible and how God, he's abundant. He has created everything, and it belongs to him. And so I was using that for myself to say that it belongs to me, and so that I could just get my head wrapped around the fact that I could have everything that I want. I could totally have everything that I want. And that at the time I was really deep in debt, and I was feeling like I didn't have anything, and so I was trying to change my mind to show myself you have everything. As long as you have God, you have everything. As long as you have a connection to the source of the universe, you have a connection, a direct connection to the one who owns everything. If all the blades of grass were dollar bills, and you have a connection to the source of the blades of grass, and you say, I'd like those, he'd give you all that money, in one fell swoop. And so I had to really practice that. And it happened 3 months later, in March. I always tell that story of I got a huge check that wiped out all my debts. And it was because of these practices. It was because of me constantly telling myself that it was possible for me. And then my intuition was kind of getting the wheels turning to say, okay, how's it possible? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Who are we going to call? What's going to happen? What are we going to do so that I could receive that money? I have to go to the post office today because I put a bunch of stuff on eBay last year, and the stuff from eBay is still selling. It's still, like, slowly but surely it's selling, and I'm so grateful for that because I've been doing a lot of practices this week for sales because I was feeling like I hadn't had a sale in like 3 or 4 weeks. And so finally I got 2 sales this week, and it was like finally, you know, things are starting to happen, things are starting to open up, and I know it's all because of my mindset. I was blocking things before. I very much had my foot on the brake, actually, for this whole year, because I didn't feel like my product was exactly the way I wanted it to be. And now that it is, I'm ready to let the abundance flow. So now I'm bringing back to my own recollection these ideas of abundance again. Just thinking of something. So sometimes we think that we have to like take courses and do all these master classes. I'm speaking for myself, really. In order to learn things and in order to have practices, and you have to buy a notebook and write down all these things. You really don't. You really just have to look for examples of abundance in your surroundings. So I just look around and I just look to see, like, where is there abundance? There's abundance all around. Abundance is in nature because God is abundant. Now, we as humans try to limit things, like, you know, they always try to tell you, if you're marketing, you know, you have to create scarcity, you have to create urgency, you have to tell people this is a limited time offer, you have to tell them this is the last day of the sale, you have to tell them there's only 5 left, you know, and all this stuff to make people buy things right away. And it just makes us all very panicky. And it's not just with sales, it's with everything. I remember wondering, I used to have this job at a different hospital in a different city, and I was always really nervous when I got to work. And I'm like, why does this job make me so anxious? And so I started to be mindful about it. I started to pay attention to what it was about the job that made me anxious. And I realized that as soon as you get to work and you log onto your computer for the first time, it's like a lab notification that pops up, but in red it says panic, 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 like 5 times in a row. Panic, 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 panic. Just person, and you know, I still can be prone to anxiety, but I know how to control it better now. And really, if you step back and get out of whatever the tiny bubble of stress is, and you look around, just go outside. I always say, go outside without your shoes on. Go outside without your shoes on. Walk, even if you're walking down the concrete or you're walking in the grass. Just feel what it feels like to be grounded to nature, what it feels like to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. Recently, and I am going to go because I said it was just going to be a quick one. Of course, I talk too much. But recently on the Michelle and Amy show, they pointed out that I have a problem with feeling like I'm going to lose things and feeling like things are going to be taken from me. And that was so accurate. Like, I do. And then yesterday I was asking someone about posting on social media, and I realized, well, I knew this already, but I realized that I really don't know how to back up my pictures. I don't know how to get my pictures from my phone to my computer. I used to have the Mac that I have. It used to be that when I plugged my phone into my computer, it would automatically upload all my pictures. And now I do that. I plug it in, it doesn't do that. And so I haven't taken the time to figure out why not. But you know what? Actually, I have iCloud backup. So I am backing up my pictures, I think. Yeah, I mean, I'm paying for storage and I have iCloud backup. So all this tech is so new to me, and it's also very confusing to me, and it really makes me anxious. I probably wouldn't care, except that I have these little children, and you know, when we were little, pictures were actually pictures. Like, you go to Walgreens or whatever and you pick up your pictures, you put them in an album, and there you go. And now pictures are digital, and because I have a lack of trust in digital, I always feel like in a blink of an eye all your things can be gone. It makes me anxious. I'm gonna lose all the pictures of my kids, right? So since this was last Friday, when this Michelle and Amy show kind of pointed out that in me, and it really started making me think about how I can fix that, because that is a real stressor to me, and I don't want to be stressed out. And so I was like, okay, Michelle was saying, okay, if everything went in a blink of an eye, I'd feel totally free. And I get that. I would feel free too if I lost everything. And it brought in this other concept that I have been thinking about and working on. That guy, sorry, somebody called me, Nipsey Hussle, I think his name is Nipsey Hussle, his name is Ermias. Anyway, I never heard of him until he actually passed away. And when he did, I watched just a snippet of the funeral because I love Lauren London. I love Lauren London. I've loved her ever since This Christmas. Maybe even before that. I loved her since Keeping Up with the Kardashians because she's one of Khloe's friends. So I love Lauren London. No, it was since ATL. I love that movie, and I love Lauren London. So, I watched the part of where she spoke at the funeral, because her son, that was her son's father. And she said that he always said, I didn't know he was like wise or anything like that, but she said that he said, people are not here. We don't possess people. We just experience them. And it was in such a way that, like, he was never here to stay. He was never here to be hers forever. She just experienced him as a love, and now he's gone, and she has her memories and her experiences. And that was so similar to what Michelle said when she said, if all my data is gone, I would just be free, because I'm not possessing it. I'm not holding on to it. I'm just using it. I'm not saving it. I'm using it. And I was thinking, wow, you're experiencing it. You're not possessing it. And I feel that way about a lot of people that I know, because since that happened, and actually I had an uncle who was killed by a drunk driver right before my twins were born. He was looking so forward to meeting my twins. It was heartbreaking. That was the most devastating loss of my entire life. And I had to realize that nobody is permanent. People are not going to be in our lives forever. But we can experience them while they're here, and we can even experience them while they're gone. Because my son, even though he never met, my uncle who passed away, he still experiences him. He looks at his pictures like he already knows him. It's amazing. It's amazing. And then my grandpa passed away a couple years after we had a devastating loss with my uncle, and it was a totally different experience for me, because I had learned to experience people in the interim, that I experienced my grandpa, and when he passed away, I continued to experience him. Actually, his spirit and his presence was more powerful after he died than it was for me, than it was when he was still alive, just because of my mindset around losing someone who was special to me. It was like they weren't meant to be here forever. People are not meant to live forever, but they can live on forever. And so that was, I don't know if that is abundance mindset or not, but I feel like it is, because I feel like that's a bigger mindset than saying they're going to die one day. You're going to die one day. I'm going to die one day. We're all going to die one day. Well, if you look at nature, there's a cycle to everything, and things are reborn. And so, it makes me feel a little bit more comforted that it's not all going to end. There's a way, when you love people and people love you, that you live on even after you're gone. Same with my great grandma who passed away. She still lives on because she's so strong in our memory. We experienced her so strongly. So when it comes to these pictures that I was so afraid of losing, I now feel like, you know what? I take less pictures. I just do. I noticed recently, even before the Michelle and Amy show, I noticed that I just take less pictures. And a lot of it is that something is happening with my kids, and I don't want to see it through the lens of the camera. Like, I want to actually experience it. I want to be in there with them. We were kicking around a soccer ball in a friend's backyard. I don't have any video of that. My kids were doing so great, kicking the ball and running, and it was amazing. But I didn't want to stop and film it, because I wanted to kick the ball around too with them and experience that with them. So this is not all about money, but it kind of started out as a thing, you know, as an idea that I was using for money, and now it's moved on to every part of life. Like you can feel like something is finite, or you can feel like it'll go on forever, and it will, depending on how you feel. If you feel like it'll go on forever, it'll go on forever. If you feel like it'll be over soon, it will definitely be over soon. So I'm no longer as afraid of losing things, and you know, I'm becoming a minimalist slowly and surely, because it feels so much more comfortable to me than being stressed out about everything that I could possibly lose. So anywho, I am going into the meeting late as usual, which I don't want to be usual. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.